The last thing I remember before going under was Ethan's face. He was holding my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm, like he'd done 1,000 times before. 7 hours of surgery ahead of me. A tumor they said could be stage 2, could be nothing, could be everything. And my husband looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "I love you. I'll be right here when you wake up. I promise." Then the anesthesiologist told me to count backward from 10, and the world went soft and blurry and finally black. I never made it past 7. When I woke up 8 hours later, groggy and nauseous and aching in places I didn't know could ache, the first thing I did was reach for Ethan's hand. My fingers found empty air. The chair beside my hospital bed was vacant. Just a wadded up tissue and a half-empty coffee cup, like evidence of someone who'd been there and left. A nurse bustled in, checking my vitals with brisk efficiency. "How are you feeling, honey? Where's my husband?" My voice came out scratchy, barely recognizable. He said he had some errands to run, said he'd be back later. She adjusted my IV with practiced hands, not meeting my eyes. "Your surgery went well. Doctor will be in soon to discuss next steps." Errands. During my cancer surgery. The word sat wrong in my chest, sharp and uncomfortable. My phone was on the side table, just out of reach. The nurse handed it to me with a sympathetic smile that made my stomach drop. 17 missed calls, 12 text messages, 3 voicemails. None of them from Ethan. The first voicemail was from our bank. The automated system with that pleasant, robotic voice that makes terrible news sound routine. "This is a courtesy notification regarding your joint savings account ending in 7743. Unusual activity has been detected. The account has been closed by account holder Ethan Latham. All funds totaling $512,000 have been transferred. If you did not authorize this transaction, please contact us immediately." I played it again. Then a third time. The words didn't change. $512,000. Gone. The inheritance that had appeared in my account 6 months ago like a miracle. The money that was supposed to be our safety net, our future, our way of surviving if the cancer treatment bankrupted us. The money Ethan had convinced me to move into our joint account because we were partners, because marriage meant sharing everything, because keeping it separate meant I didn't trust him. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. 17 times I called, each time hearing his recorded voice telling me he'd get back to me soon, and 17 times I felt a little bit more of my world crumble. My best friend Simone arrived for evening visiting hours and found me sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything except hand her my phone and let her see the bank notification for herself. Her face went through a journey. Confusion to comprehension to fury so pure, it was almost beautiful. "That son of a bitch," she said, and her voice was deadly calm in the way that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. That absolute son of a bitch. She stayed with me through the night, making phone calls, taking notes, building a timeline that I couldn't bear to look at. At some point, a nurse brought me pain medication, and I took it gratefully. Anything to make the ache in my chest feel like it was just surgical pain, and not my entire marriage disintegrating while I'd been unconscious. The next morning, Simone drove me home from the hospital. I was barely 72 hours post-op, still moving like a fragile thing, and when we pulled up to the house I'd lived in for 8 years, I knew immediately that something was wrong. The locks were changed. I stood on my own front porch with my key in my hand, trying the door over and over, like maybe I was using it wrong, like maybe I was still drugged and confused, and this was all a terrible mistake. Through the window, I could see movement. A woman. Young, blonde, visibly pregnant, carrying boxes up the stairs like she owned the place. Simone knocked on the window hard. The woman turned, startled, and for a moment we just stared at each other through the glass. Me in my hospital discharge clothes, barely able to stand. Her in yoga pants and a tank top that showed off her baby bump, looking at me like I was trespassing. She opened the window a crack. "Can I help you?" "Who are you?" Simone's voice could have cut steel. "And what are you doing in my friend's house?" The woman's face shifted, defensive. "I'm Brooke, Ethan's fiancée. Who are you? The word hung in the air between us. Fiancé. I was still married. I was still wearing my wedding ring. And this woman, this stranger, was calling herself my husband's fiancé. When did he propose? I heard myself ask, my voice distant and strange. Brooke hesitated, and I watched her do the math, watched her realize she was about to say something that would sound very, very bad. 2 weeks ago, he said his divorce would be final soon, that his ex-wife was difficult, but he was handling it. 2 weeks ago, I was scheduling my surgery. 2 weeks ago, Ethan was holding me while I cried about the biopsy results. 2 weeks ago, he was promising we'd get through this together. I'm the ex-wife, and I said flatly. Except we're not divorced. We're very much still married. And this is my house. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and drop a comment. I see every single comment, and I appreciate each one of you so much. Your support means the world to me. Now back to the story. Brooke's face went pale. That's not, he said you were already separated. He said the paperwork was just a formality. When did you meet him? Simone pressed. 8 months ago. We worked together. He said his marriage was over, that he was just waiting for the right time to leave. 8 months. We'd celebrated our anniversary 7 months ago. He'd taken me to the restaurant where we had our first date and told me he'd never loved anyone the way he loved me. I sat down on my own front porch steps because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The surgical staples in my abdomen pulled with the movement, and I welcomed the pain. It was cleaner than what I was feeling in my chest. The divorce papers arrived by certified mail 3 days later, filed on October 14th, the day of my surgery, signed and submitted to the court at 11:47 a.m., while I was still under anesthesia, while the surgeons were cutting into my body to remove a tumor that might kill me. The grounds were irreconcilable differences. The proposed asset division gave him the house, both cars, and his 401k. I would keep my teaching pension and whatever personal items I could prove were mine before the marriage. No mention of the $512,000. No mention of the joint account he'd drained. Just a clean, simple divorce filing that made it look like a mutual, amicable split. I sat at Simone's kitchen table where I'd been staying since the hospital, staring at the papers until the words blurred together. He planned this, I said finally. He waited until I was unconscious. Until I couldn't fight back, couldn't stop him, couldn't even ask him why. Simone was on her phone, furiously typing. I'm finding you a lawyer, a shark, someone who will tear him apart. But when we met with the lawyer the next day, a tired woman with kind eyes and 20 years of family law experience, the news wasn't what I wanted to hear. The money from the joint account is going to be complicated, she said, reviewing the bank statements I'd managed to print. Legally, funds in a joint account belong to both parties. Unless you can prove the money was specifically yours, designated for your use only, he had every right to withdraw it. But he did it while I was in surgery, while I was unconscious. Morally reprehensible? Absolutely. Legally actionable? That's harder to prove. The timing is suspicious, but without evidence of fraud or coercion, it's just one spouse accessing marital funds. It wasn't marital funds, I said, my voice rising despite the pain it caused in my healing incisions. It was my inheritance. From my biological father. It came to me specifically. Was it designated as separate property? Was there paperwork establishing it as your sole asset? I thought back to that day 6 months ago when Dr. Leona Quinn had walked into my life. The leather portfolio she'd carried, the documents I'd signed without reading carefully because I was overwhelmed and grieving my mother, and this whole situation felt surreal. I don't know, I admitted. There was paperwork, I signed things, but I don't remember what they said. The lawyer made a note. Find those documents. If the inheritance had strings attached, if it was conditional or designated specifically for you, that changes everything. Without that, I have to be honest with you, this is going to be an uphill battle. I left her office feeling hollowed out. 3 weeks post-surgery, still healing, still waiting for pathology results that would tell me if the cancer was truly gone, and I was facing the reality that the man I'd trusted with my life had stolen my future and might actually get away with it. That night, I went through every box I'd managed to retrieve from the house before Ethan changed the locks. Bank statements, tax returns, old birthday cards, photos from our wedding where we both looked so young and stupidly happy. And at the bottom of a file box labeled Important Documents, I found it. The envelope from Dr. Leona Quinn, still sealed, with a note paper clipped to the front in her precise handwriting. Please review these trust documents carefully. They contain important information about the conditions of your father's gift. I'd never opened it. I'd been so overwhelmed by the money, by the shock of learning my father was alive and apparently wealthy, that I'd shoved the paperwork aside to deal with later. Later had never come. My hands shook as I broke the seal. Inside were 20 pages of legal documents, dense with language I barely understood. But certain phrases jumped out at me. Conditional loan from the Brennan Family Trust. Designated beneficiary, Iris Brennan Latham, for her sole use and benefit. Unauthorized transfer or misuse of these funds constitutes fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. And at the bottom, in bold letters, all transactions from the account holding these funds are monitored and recorded by the trust administrator. I read it 3 times, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my surgical wounds. This wasn't a gift. It was a loan, a monitored loan, which meant every dollar Ethan had stolen was documented, tracked, recorded, which meant someone had been watching. I called the number at the bottom of the letterhead. It was after 8 p.m., but the phone rang only twice before a woman answered. Brennan Trust Administration. This is Dr. Quinn. My voice came out strangled. You knew what he was doing, and you didn't stop him. There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her tone was careful, measured. Ms. Latham, I'm glad you called. I've been waiting to hear from you. You've been waiting? I had cancer surgery. My husband stole $500,000 while I was on the operating table, and you were waiting? I know this is difficult to understand right now, but I need you to trust me. May I come see you? Tonight, if possible. There are things you need to know? Things I need to know? How about you start with why you let him rob me blind? Because, Dr. Quinn said quietly, your father needed to see who your husband truly was. And now we have all the evidence we need to make sure he faces consequences for what he's done. She arrived at Simone's apartment an hour later, carrying the same leather briefcase I remembered from our first meeting. But this time, she was accompanied by someone else. A man in his late 60s, silver hair, eyes the same unusual gray-green as mine, wearing an expensive suit that looked out of place in Simone's modest living room. He stood in the doorway, not entering until I nodded permission, and when he spoke, his voice cracked with emotion. Iris, I'm Tobias, your father, and I owe you an explanation. If this story is hitting close to home, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything and helps these stories reach more people who need them. Now, let's hear what my father has to say. I should have felt something. Anger, maybe. Recognition. The rush of meeting a parent I'd never known. Instead, I just felt tired and hurt, and so far beyond my capacity for more emotional damage that I could only stare at him. Why are you here? I asked. Tobias sat down slowly like he was approaching a wounded animal. Because 31 years ago, I made a choice that broke my heart. And 6 months ago, I made another choice that I'm starting to think was a mistake. I need to explain both of them before you hear anything else. Simone brought coffee that no one touched. Dr. Quinn opened her briefcase and pulled out a laptop, and my father, this stranger with my eyes, started talking. When you were 2 years old, I was building a tech company. We were on the verge of something massive, something that would eventually be worth billions. But I'd made enemies. Dangerous people who wanted what I had and didn't care who they hurt to get it. They threatened your mother, they threatened you, and I realized that as long as I was in your lives, you'd never be safe. So you left, I said flatly. So I left. I gave your mother money to disappear, to change her name, to take you somewhere I couldn't be traced. She became Sarah Brennan instead. Of Sarah Morrison. You grew up in Ohio instead of California. I made sure you were financially secure, but I stayed away. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone, I watched from a distance. Your mother sent me photos, updates, report cards. But I never contacted you directly because the moment I did, I'd lead those dangerous people right to you. And now, those people just magically disappeared. They went to prison. They died. They moved on to other targets. By the time you were 15, the threat was essentially gone. But by then, you didn't know me. You had a life, friends, a mother who loved you. I thought showing up and disrupting everything would be selfish. So, I stayed away. Until my mother died, I said, the words bitter. Tobias's face crumpled. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I should have been. I should have helped you through that grief. But I was a coward. I told myself you were better off without a stranger complicating your mourning. So why now? Why 6 months ago? He looked at Dr. Quinn, who pulled up something on her laptop and turned it to face me. It was a spreadsheet. Columns of numbers, dates, transactions. When your mother died, I had Dr. Quinn look into your life. I wanted to know if you were okay, if you needed anything, if there was some way I could help without disrupting everything. And what we found was concerning. The spreadsheet showed financial records. My financial records. Bank statements, credit reports, spending patterns going back years. You spied on me? I couldn't decide if I was horrified or too numb to care. We researched you, Dr. Quinn corrected gently. It's what any wealthy parent does when they're considering bringing a child into their life. We needed to know who you were, what your circumstances were, whether you were vulnerable to people who might try to exploit your connection to Tobias. And what did you find? Tobias's jaw tightened. We found a marriage with concerning financial patterns. Your husband had significant credit card debt he'd hidden from you. He'd taken out loans in his name, using your joint assets as collateral. There were payments to a woman named Brooke Tillman that he'd categorized as business expenses. The financial profile suggested someone living beyond his means and using his spouse's stability to fund it. I felt sick. So you decided to test him with $500,000. I decided to give you resources, Tobias said carefully. And yes, to see what the people around you would do when you suddenly had significant wealth. The money wasn't just a gift, Iris, it was a tool, a way to reveal true character. By letting me get hurt, I didn't know you'd get sick. His voice broke. When Leona told me about your diagnosis, I wanted to intervene immediately. I wanted to pay for the best doctors, the best treatment, anything you needed. She convinced me to wait. I turned to Dr. Quinn, who met my gaze steadily. You convinced him to let my husband rob me. I convinced him to let your husband show you who he really was, she said. Because if we'd intervened before Ethan made his move, you would have spent the rest of your life wondering if your father was wrong about him. You would have defended him. You would have doubted everything we told you. So yes, I waited. I watched him drain that account while you were in surgery. I documented every transaction, and I made sure that when the truth came out, there would be no room for doubt. That's sociopathic. That's strategic, Dr. Quinn corrected. I spent 15 years as a prosecutor before I started working for your father. I've seen what happens when women try to leave predatory spouses without ironclad evidence. They get dragged through court, bankrupted by legal fees, painted as unstable or vindictive. Ethan was planning to do exactly that to you. We have the emails to prove it. She pulled up another screen. Email threads between Ethan and his lawyer dated weeks before. My diagnosis. Subject, exit strategy, I read aloud. I need to get out of this marriage, but my wife has better credit and more stable income. How do I protect my assets and minimize what she can claim? The lawyer's response. Document everything. Build a case that she's difficult or unstable. If possible, wait for a moment when she's vulnerable or distracted. The timing of the filing can make all the difference. I scrolled down. More emails, more planning. Ethan asking about the legal definition of marital property, about how inheritance is classified, about whether money in a joint account is considered shared assets. He was researching how to steal from me before I even got the inheritance, I whispered. 3 months before, Tobias confirmed. He was already planning to leave. The money just gave him the means and the timeline. Dr. Quinn pulled up another file. And then there's Brooke. They've been involved for 8 months. She's 4 months pregnant. The timeline suggests the affair started around the time Ethan began seriously researching divorce. I stared at the evidence, this digital autopsy of my marriage, and felt something shift inside me. Not just heartbreak anymore, something harder, colder. What exactly did you document? Dr. Quinn smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. Everything. Every transaction from the account Ethan created with your stolen money. Every purchase, every transfer, every withdrawal. We know he bought Brooke a car. We know he paid for a luxury apartment lease. We know he purchased jewelry, furniture, and made a down payment on a beach condo in Florida under both their names. How do you know all this? Because I own controlling shares in the bank he used, Tobias said quietly. And because every account that touches money from my trust is monitored by forensic accountants. It's not just about protecting my assets, it's about protecting the people I love from those who would exploit them. So you let him steal it, knowing you could track it. I let him steal it, knowing he would hang himself with the evidence, Tobias corrected. And he did. Every purchase was a federal crime. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, wire fraud, receiving stolen property. He committed at least 6 felonies with your money, and he documented all of it himself. Simone, who'd been silent through all of this, finally spoke up. Why are you telling her this now? Why not before the surgery? Why let her wake up to that nightmare? Dr. Quinn turned to her. Because Iris needed to know beyond any doubt that Ethan's cruelty wasn't something she caused or could have prevented. She needed to experience his betrayal so she would never be tempted to go back. Never wonder if she'd made a mistake in leaving him. Predatory spouses rely on their victims' love and doubt. We eliminated both. That's manipulative, I said. Yes, Dr. Quinn agreed simply, but it's effective. And now, instead of a messy divorce where Ethan plays the victim and drags you through years of court battles, we have a criminal case. We have evidence of premeditation. We have documentation of theft occurring while you were incapacitated. We have everything we need to put him in prison and ensure you get everything he stole plus damages. I looked at my father, this stranger who'd orchestrated my pain to protect me from worse pain. What if I don't want this? What if I just want to walk away? Then you walk away, Tobias said immediately. I won't force you into anything, but I'm offering you a choice. Let me help you get justice. Let me introduce you to resources and protection you've never had. Or I'll step back and you'll never hear from me again. Either way, the evidence we've gathered is yours to use or not use as you see fit. Before we continue, if you're on the edge of your seat right now, please subscribe and drop a comment. Tell me what you think Iris should do. I love reading your predictions, and your support means everything. Now, let's see what happens next. I thought about Ethan in our house. The house where we'd hung photos and painted walls and talked about raising children someday. Thought about Brooke moving into the master bedroom, sleeping in the bed I'd picked out, living the life I thought was mine. Thought about him draining our account while I was unconscious, vulnerable, fighting for my life. Thought about him planning this for months, maybe longer, waiting for his moment. What exactly are you offering? I asked. Dr. Quinn pulled out 3 folders from her briefcase. Folder 1, the criminal case. We file charges for financial exploitation, fraud, and theft. The district attorney already has all the evidence. Ethan would be facing 3 to 7 years in prison, plus restitution. She opened the second folder. Folder 2, the civil case. We sue for return of all stolen funds, emotional damages, and legal fees. Given the evidence, his lawyer will recommend he settle immediately. You get your money back, plus interest, plus compensation for what he put you through. The third folder was thicker than the others. Folder 3, the personal case. Your father is offering you a position in his foundation, working with arts education programs for underprivileged children. The salary is $200,000 a year to start. Full benefits, including the best health insurance money can buy for your ongoing cancer monitoring. You'd have resources, protection, and the ability to do meaningful work while you heal. And in exchange? No exchange, Tobias said. I'm not asking you to be my daughter. I'm asking if I can finally, after 31 years, act like your father. I looked at him, really looked at him. His hands were shaking slightly. His eyes were damp. This billionaire who'd built empires and orchestrated elaborate tests was nervous, scared even, scared that I'd say no. I need time, I said finally. I need to process all of this, the cancer, the divorce, the fact that my father's been watching me my entire life like some kind of guardian angel stalker. Tobias actually smiled. That's fair. Take all the time you need. But while you're deciding, let me at least help with the immediate crisis. Let me get you a real lawyer, someone who specializes in cases like this. Let me make sure Ethan doesn't get away with what he did. Why does this matter so much to you? His answer was simple. Because he hurt my daughter. And I've missed 31 years of protecting you. I'm not missing another day. I didn't cry. I was too exhausted, too overwhelmed, too medicated. But I nodded. Okay, help me bury him. The mandatory mediation session was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Ethan thought it was a routine, a standard step in uncontested divorce proceedings. His lawyer had sent over proposed terms. He'd keep the house, the cars, his 401k. I'd keep my pension and my personal items. Clean, simple, friendly divorce between two people who'd grown apart. He had no idea what was waiting for him. Dr. Quinn had arranged for the mediation to take place in a conference room at a downtown law office. Neutral territory, professional setting. I arrived early with Simone, still moving carefully because my surgical wounds were healing slowly, still wearing the kind of comfortable clothes that announced I wasn't trying to impress anyone. Ethan walked in at exactly 10 a.m. with his lawyer, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit who had the look of someone used to winning. Ethan saw me and his face did something complicated. Guilt, maybe, or calculation. He'd lost weight, I noticed. Looked tired. Iris, he said, his voice soft, attempting warmth. You look better. How are you feeling? I didn't answer, just stared at him until the silence became uncomfortable and he looked away. His lawyer cleared his throat. Shall we begin? I think we can move through this quickly. My client is prepared to be very reasonable about the asset division. How generous, Simone muttered beside me. The mediator, a neutral third party, was reviewing paperwork when the conference room door opened again. Dr. Leona Quinn entered, followed by a younger woman carrying 3 large accordion files. Ethan's lawyer frowned. I wasn't informed there would be additional counsel present. I'm Dr. Leona Quinn, representing Ms. Latham and the Brennan Family Trust. She set her briefcase on the table with a deliberate thunk. I apologize for the late notice, but new information has come to light that significantly impacts these proceedings. Ethan shifted in his seat, the first sign of nervousness crossing his face. What information? Dr. Quinn didn't answer him directly. Instead, she addressed the mediator. Before we discuss asset division, we need to address the matter of the $512,000 that Mr. Latham transferred from the couple's joint account on October 14th of this year. That was marital property, Ethan's lawyer said immediately. My client had every legal right to access those funds. Actually, Dr. Quinn said, opening the first accordion file, he didn't. The funds in question were a conditional loan from the Brennan Family Trust, designated specifically for Ms. Latham's use. The loan documents, which were provided when the funds were deposited, clearly stated that unauthorized transfer constituted fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. She slid a stack of papers across the table. These are the original trust documents, signed by Ms. Latham when she accepted the loan. You'll note on page 7, paragraph 3, the explicit language about designated use. Ethan's lawyer scanned the documents, his expression shifting from confident to concerned. We were never made aware that these were loan funds. The documentation was included with the initial deposit, Dr. Quinn said calmly. Whether your client chose to read it is not our concern. What is our concern is that he transferred these funds without authorization while Ms. Latham was incapacitated during surgery. She pulled out another document. This is the bank's timestamp record. The transfer was initiated at 7:03 a.m. on October 14th. Ms. Latham's surgery began at 6:15 a.m. She was under general anesthesia and legally incapable of consenting to any financial transactions. I didn't need her consent, Ethan said, his voice rising slightly. It was a joint account. That's how joint accounts work. Not when the funds in that account are designated trust property, Dr. Quinn countered, and not when the account holder is incapacitated. But let's move past the legal technicalities and discuss what you actually did with the stolen money. She opened the second accordion file, and I watched Ethan's face drain of color as she began laying out photographs. Bank statements, purchase receipts, wire transfer confirmations. On October 14th, approximately 40 minutes after transferring the funds, you purchased a 2024 Mercedes sedan for $68,000. The car was registered to Ms. Brooke Tillman, your coworker and mistress of 8 months. She laid out another document. On October 15th, you paid first and last month's rent, plus a security deposit totaling $18,000 for a luxury apartment in the Pearl District. The lease lists both you and Ms. Tillman as tenants. More documents, more purchases, each one meticulously documented. October 17th, jewelry from Cartier, $4,000. October 20th, furniture from West Elm, $12,000. October 23rd, a down payment of $90,000 on a beachfront condo in Destin, Florida, title held jointly by you and Ms. Tillman. By the time she finished, there were 47 separate documented purchases spread across the table. Nearly $300,000 spent in 3 weeks. Where's the rest? I heard myself ask, my voice surprisingly steady. Ethan wouldn't meet my eyes. His lawyer was furiously making notes, probably calculating how completely screwed his client was. Dr. Quinn smiled, and it was a predator's expression. The remaining $200,000 is in an offshore account. We have the wire transfer records. We also have Mr. Latham's communications with the bank in the Cayman Islands, discussing how to structure the transfer to avoid triggering federal reporting requirements. That's not what happened, Ethan stammered. Isn't it? Dr. Quinn pulled out printed emails. These are your communications with Cayman International Bank, dated October 16th through October 19th. You specifically asked about structuring the transfer in increments under $10,000 to avoid federal detection. That's called structuring, Mr. Latham. It's a federal crime. She turned to the mediator. We're not here to mediate asset division. We're here to inform Mr. Latham that we're filing criminal charges, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, wire fraud, structuring financial transactions to evade reporting requirements, and receiving stolen property. Ethan's lawyer was shaking his head. This is extortion. You can't threaten criminal charges to gain advantage in a civil divorce proceeding? We're not threatening, Dr. Quinn said mildly. We're informing. The district attorney's office received our evidence package this morning. The charges will be filed tomorrow regardless of what happens in this mediation. But we are offering Mr. Latham an opportunity to make restitution before the criminal proceedings begin, which may influence sentencing recommendations. What do you want? Ethan finally spoke, his voice hollow. Everything you stole, returned in full plus interest and penalties. That's $643,000. The house, which was purchased using Ms. Latham's credit and her down payment funds, transferred entirely to her name. Your agreement to plead guilty to at least one felony charge with sentencing, recommendations of 18 months to 3 years, and a permanent restraining order. 3 years in prison for accessing my own bank account? For stealing from your wife while she was unconscious during cancer surgery, Dr. Quinn corrected, her voice ice. For committing wire fraud. For structuring financial transactions to avoid federal oversight. For moving your pregnant mistress into the home you shared with your wife before the divorce was even filed. Take your pick of charges, Mr. Latham. We have evidence for all of them. Quick pause here. If you're enjoying this story of justice being served, please hit that like button and share it. Your support helps stories like this reach people who need them. Drop a comment telling me what you think Ethan deserves. Now let's see how this plays out. Ethan looked at his lawyer, who was reading through the evidence with increasing horror. Can they actually do this? The evidence is compelling, his lawyer admitted. The timing alone, transferring funds while your wife was incapacitated, that's going to look very bad to a jury. Combined with the offshore account structuring, the affair, the premeditation, evidenced by these emails with me from months ago, yes, they have a strong criminal case. I'll go to prison. Probably, his lawyer said bluntly. The question is for how long and whether you can negotiate restitution to reduce the sentence. Ethan turned to me finally, really looked at me for the first time since entering the room. Iris, please. I made a mistake. I panicked. The money, it was just sitting there, and I thought maybe we were going to split anyway, and I wanted to make sure I had something. You thought wrong, I said, and my voice didn't shake. You didn't take that money because you were scared of being poor. You took it because you've been planning to leave me for months, and you saw an opportunity to do it when I was at my most vulnerable. That's not true. There are emails, Ethan, between you and your lawyer. From before I was even diagnosed, you were researching how to leave me, how to protect your assets, how to time the divorce for maximum advantage. You weren't making a panicked mistake. You were executing a plan. His face crumpled, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered waking up from surgery, reaching for his hand and finding emptiness. Remembered standing on my own porch, unable to get in. Remembered seeing Brooke, pregnant with his child, living in my house. You stole from me while I was fighting for my life, I said quietly. You don't get to ask me for mercy now. Dr. Quinn pushed a document across the table. This is a settlement agreement. Mr. Latham returns all stolen funds plus penalties within 30 days. The house is transferred to Ms. Latham. He pleads guilty to 1 count of financial exploitation. We recommend a sentence of 18 months with possibility of early release for good behavior. He agrees to the restraining order and has no contact with Ms. Latham for a minimum of 5 years. And if I don't sign? Then we proceed with all charges. Wire fraud alone carries a maximum of 20 years. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult carries 3 to 7. Structuring carries 5. You'd be looking at a potential sentence of 30 plus years, though realistically you'd probably get 8 to 12. And Ms. Latham would still sue you civilly for everything you own. Either way, you're returning the money. The question is whether you want to do it from prison for 18 months or prison for a decade. Ethan's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I could see Ethan's resistance crumbling. His shoulders sagged. His hands were shaking. I need time to think about this. You have 24 hours, Dr. Quinn said. After that, we file all charges and withdraw the settlement offer. Choose wisely, Mr. Latham. We left him sitting there, his lawyer still talking urgently, his face ashen. Simone walked beside me, her hand steady on my elbow as we navigated the elevator and lobby. Once we were outside, in the cool autumn air that felt like freedom, I finally let myself feel it. Not satisfaction exactly, not triumph. Just a quiet, solid knowledge that I'd taken my power back. How are you doing? Simone asked. I'm okay, I said. And surprisingly, I meant it. I think I'm actually okay. Dr. Quinn emerged from the building a few minutes later, her heels clicking efficiently against the pavement. That went better than expected. His lawyer knows he has no defense. I'd be shocked if he doesn't sign the settlement by tomorrow morning. And if he doesn't, then he's even stupider than I thought, and we bury him. She said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. But he'll sign. Men like Ethan are brave when they're stealing from vulnerable women. They're cowards when they face real consequences. What happens after he signs? The criminal case proceeds. He'll plead guilty probably within 60 days. Sentencing hearing within 90 days after that. The house transfer can happen immediately once he signs the paperwork. The money will be returned to the trust account within 30 days or he violates the agreement and we add breach of contract to his charges. It all sounded so clinical, so procedural. Like we were discussing a business transaction instead of the implosion of an 8-year marriage. Your father would like to see you, Dr. Quinn added, her tone softening slightly. When you're ready, no pressure, no expectations. But he's been waiting 31 years. He'd like to actually meet his daughter. I thought about Tobias, this stranger who'd orchestrated an elaborate test of my husband's character, who'd let me get hurt to prove a point, who'd been watching from the shadows my entire life. Tomorrow, I said. Tell him tomorrow. Right now, I just want to go home, take my pain, medication, and sleep for 16 hours. Simone's home or your home? I don't have a home anymore. Dr. Quinn pulled an envelope from her briefcase. Actually, you do. As of this morning, I filed an emergency motion for exclusive possession of the marital residence pending divorce proceedings. Given that Mr. Latham locked you out while you were recovering from surgery, and given that he's currently under investigation for felony theft, the judge granted the order. The locks will be changed by 5 p.m. today. Your new keys. I stared at the envelope. My house? Your house. Brooke Tillman has been served with eviction notice. She has 72 hours to remove her belongings. After that, anything she leaves becomes your property. Can she really do all this? I asked Simone. Simone was grinning. Apparently, when your dad is a billionaire with a team of lawyers, yeah, she can do all this. Dr. Quinn's expression remained professional, but there was a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. Your father has been waiting 31 years to protect you. Now that he can, he's not holding back. By 6 p.m. that evening, I was standing in my own living room for the first time in 3 weeks. The house smelled different, wrong. Brooke's perfume lingered in the air. There were boxes stacked in corners, her belongings mixed with mine in a way that made my skin crawl. But it was my house. My name would be on the deed. My locks on the doors. Simone had come with me, refusing to let me face this alone. We spent the evening methodically packing everything that belonged to Brooke into boxes and moving them to the garage. Her clothes, her toiletries, her kitchen gadgets, her decorative pillows that had replaced the ones I'd chosen years ago. This one's going in the trash, Simone declared, holding up a framed photo of Ethan and Brooke on what looked like a beach vacation. Actually, all of these are going in the trash. There were 17 framed photos of them scattered throughout the house. 17 moments of their relationship documented and displayed while I'd been in treatment, in surgery, in recovery. While I'd been fighting for my life, they'd been taking selfies. We gathered them all, every single frame, and Simone took great satisfaction in dropping them one by one into a garbage bag. Therapeutic, she announced. You should try it. I picked up one last photo, this one from the master bedroom nightstand. Ethan and Brooke, her hand on her pregnant belly, both of them smiling at the camera. On the back, someone had written in looping script, "Our new beginning." My new beginning came at the cost of my marriage, my health, my sense of trust. Theirs came at the cost of basic human decency. I dropped it in the trash bag. There, done. This house is officially decontaminated, Simone said. Well, except for the guest room. I haven't looked in there yet. The guest room had been my art studio before we'd converted it for visitors we never had. I pushed. Opened the door, half afraid of what I'd find. It was full of baby furniture. A crib, a changing table, a rocking chair, all still in boxes waiting to be assembled. Paint samples taped to the wall in various shades of yellow and mint green. A mobile hanging from the ceiling fixture. Little elephants and giraffes rotating slowly in the air. Current from the open door. They'd been planning a nursery. In my house. In my studio where I used to paint on weekends. Where I'd dreamed of teaching my own children about art someday. I sat down hard on the floor, the surgical incisions pulling with the sudden movement, and I finally cried. Not quiet tears, not dignified grief. Ugly, gasping sobs that hurt my healing wounds and made Simone kneel beside me on the carpet, holding me while I shattered. I wanted kids, I managed between sobs. We were supposed to start trying after I got promoted. He said he wanted to wait until we were more stable financially, and the whole time he was planning to have them with her. He's garbage, Simone said fiercely. And you're going to be okay. You're going to survive this, and you're going to build something better, and someday you'll have the family you want with someone who actually deserves you. I have cancer. You had cancer, past tense. The pathology came back clear, remember? They got it all. You're cancer-free. She was right. The results had come back 3 days ago, buried under the chaos of divorce proceedings and criminal charges. Clean margins. No lymph node involvement. Stage 1, caught early, prognosis excellent. I'd been so focused on Ethan's betrayal that I'd barely processed the good news. I'm cancer-free, I repeated, testing the words. You're cancer-free. You're divorce pending. You're about to be significantly wealthier once Dickhead returns your money. And you have a billionaire father who apparently has a whole team of people ready to destroy your enemies. Honestly, your life is about to get really good. If you've made it this far in the story, thank you for being here. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me what you think Iris should do with that nursery. Should she turn it back into a studio? Make it something else? I read every comment. Now let's meet the father. The next morning, I drove to meet Tobias at a restaurant he'd chosen. A quiet place with private booths and the kind of service that doesn't interrupt. Dr. Quinn had offered to come as a buffer, but I'd declined. This needed to be just us. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, nervously shredding a napkin. When he saw me, he stood so abruptly he nearly knocked over his water glass. Iris, thank you for coming. Up close, the resemblance was unmistakable. Same eyes, same slight curve to the jaw, same way of tilting the head when uncertain. I was looking at a genetic mirror aged by 31 years of absence. We sat. An awkward silence stretched between us, broken only when the server appeared to take drink orders. Coffee for both of us, black. Another small similarity. I don't know how to do this, Tobias said finally. I've imagined this conversation 1,000 times. Practiced what I'd say. Now that you're here, all of it sounds inadequate. Why don't you start with the truth? Why did you really leave? He took a breath, and I watched him choose his words carefully. When you were born, I was 35 years old and building a company that would eventually become one of the largest technology firms in the world. We were developing software that would revolutionize data encryption. It made me very wealthy very quickly, and it also made me a target. A target for what? Industrial espionage, corporate sabotage, competitors who wanted our technology and didn't care about legal methods to get it. He paused. There was a man named Victor Krauss. He ran a rival firm, and when he couldn't buy me out or steal our patents, he started making threats, not just business threats, personal ones, against me and Mom. Explicit, detailed threats about what would happen to you if I didn't hand over our source code. Your mother and I went to the police, got restraining orders, hired security. But Krauss had connections, resources. The threats escalated. Someone tried to break into our home. Your mother's car was tampered with. And I realized that as long as I was in your lives, you'd never be safe. So you left us to deal with it alone? I left so he'd have no leverage over me. I gave your mother enough money to disappear completely, to change your identities, to start over somewhere he'd never find you. And then I made sure Krauss knew you were gone, untraceable, beyond his reach. It took 3 years, but eventually he lost interest. Found other targets, other ways to come after me that didn't involve innocence. But you never came back. His hands tightened around his coffee cup. By then, you were 5 years old. You didn't remember me. Your mother had built a life, friends, a community. I told myself showing up would be selfish, that it would only confuse you, so I watched from a distance. Made sure you had everything you needed financially. Made sure you were safe. But I didn't disrupt your life. Did Mom know that you were watching? She knew. We maintained minimal contact, just enough for her to update me on how you were doing. She sent photos every birthday. When you graduated high school, when you went to college, when you got engaged. I've been there for every milestone, just never close enough for you to see me. I thought about all those years, all those moments I'd believed my father didn't care enough to check on me. You were at my wedding. Back row left side. I left before the reception. His voice cracked. You looked so happy. I thought maybe I'd made the right choice, staying away. You'd built a good life without me. And when Mom died? I wanted to come to the funeral. Dr. Quinn convinced me it would be too much, too shocking. So I waited. I researched your life, your husband, your circumstances, and what I found concerned me enough that I decided to take action. The test. The test, he confirmed. I needed to know if Ethan loved you or loved what you could give him. If he was building a life with you or building an exit strategy. The money was bait, yes, but it was also a gift. If he'd been honest, if he'd treated it as yours and respected your choices about it, you would have kept it regardless. The test wasn't about punishing you, it was about revealing him. It worked. It worked, and I hate that it hurt you. I hate that I had to watch you suffer through that betrayal to prove what I already suspected. But I'm not sorry you know the truth now instead of 10 years from now when you'd wasted even more of your life on him. I sat with that for a moment, turning it over in my mind. The calculated cruelty of letting me get hurt to prove a point. The paternal protection that came 3 decades too late. The stranger across from me who had my eyes and my DNA but none of my memories. I don't know how to feel about you, I said finally. Part of me understands why you left. Part of me is grateful you stopped Ethan from getting away with it. But part of me is just angry that you were watching my whole life and never let me know you were there. That's fair. All of it is fair. I grew up thinking my father didn't want me. Do you know what that does to a kid? I spent my whole childhood trying to be easy, trying to be good enough, trying not to take up too much space because I thought that's why you left. Because I was too much trouble. Tobias's face crumpled. You were never too much. You were everything. You still are. I made a choice 31 years ago that I thought would keep you safe, and maybe it did. But it also hurt you in ways I didn't anticipate. I can't undo that. I can only ask if you'll give me a chance to do better going forward. What does that look like? What do you actually want from me? I want to know you. Not just watch from a distance, but actually be part of your life if you'll let me. I want to help you heal from what Ethan did. I want to introduce you to the Family Foundation, show you the work we do, see if any of it interests you. And selfishly, I want to make up for lost time. I'm 67 years old. I don't know how many years I have left. I'd like to spend them knowing my daughter. The server returned with menus we didn't open. The morning coffee crowd buzzed around us, people living their normal lives while mine rearranged itself into something unrecognizable. Tell me about the foundation, I said finally. The arts education work Dr. Quinn mentioned. Tobias's face brightened, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. We fund after-school programs in underserved communities. Art supplies, music lessons, theater workshops, things that get cut from school budgets. First, but matter so much for kids who need creative outlets. Why arts education specifically? Because when I was building my company, drowning in code and stress and corporate warfare, the only thing that kept me sane was playing piano. My mother taught me when I was young. It was the one part of my life that wasn't about competition or profit or winning. It was just about creating something beautiful. He paused. Your mother told me you became an art teacher, that you work with elementary students. 3rd and 4th grade. I teach them basic drawing, painting, clay work. Most of them have never held a real paintbrush before they walk into my classroom. That's exactly the kind of work our foundation supports. We have 17 programs across 6 states, reaching about 4,000 kids a year. I'd like to expand that to 50 programs, 10,000 kids. But I need someone who understands education, who actually works with children to help build the curriculum and training. You want me to work for you. I want to work with you. There's a difference. This isn't charity or nepotism. It's offering you a position you're actually qualified for with a salary that reflects the value of your expertise and a chance to impact thousands of kids who need exactly what you know how to give them. I thought about my classroom, my students with their paint-stained fingers and unfiltered creativity. Thought about the school budget cuts every year, the supplies I bought with my own money, the programs that got eliminated because nobody in administration thought art was essential. $200,000 a year, I said, remembering Dr. Quinn's offer. That's 4 times my teaching salary. It's the market rate for a director-level position at a major foundation. Less than I'd pay someone with an MBA and no classroom experience. You'd be worth every penny. And the health insurance? Platinum-level coverage through the foundation's corporate plan. Any doctor, any hospital, any treatment you need for monitoring, or if anything comes back, you'd never have to worry about medical bills again. It was surreal, talking about money and job offers while my marriage disintegrated and my husband faced prison time. But it was also practical, necessary. I needed to rebuild my life. This was a foundation to build on. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. The position will be there when you're ready, and if you decide you'd rather stay in your classroom and never see me again, I'll respect that too. Before we go further, If this story is resonating with you, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment. Tell me about a time someone surprised you, good or bad. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need them. Now let's see what Iris decides. We finished our coffee and talked about safer things. My childhood memories of my mother, his early years building the company, the strange overlap of our lives that never quite touched. He asked about my art, what I liked to create when I wasn't teaching. I told him about the studio I'd lost, the nursery that had replaced it, and he listened with the kind of attention that felt almost hungry. "I'd like to see your work sometime," he said, "if you're comfortable sharing it." "Most of it is packed away in storage. After Mom died, I didn't have space for it. Ethan wasn't interested in me keeping a studio at home." "Another red flag I wish I'd seen sooner," Tobias said quietly. "Partners who love you want you to have space for the things that matter to you." We parted with an awkward half hug, both of us uncertain about the boundaries of this new relationship. He promised to have Dr. Quinn send over information about the foundation programs. I promised to actually read it this time. Driving home, I felt something unfamiliar. Not quite hope, not quite peace. Maybe just the absence of panic. For 3 weeks, I'd been drowning in betrayal and logistics and medical recovery. Now, for the first time, I could see a shape to the future that didn't involve just surviving. Ethan signed the settlement agreement that afternoon. Dr. Quinn called to tell me, her voice professionally neutral but with an undercurrent of satisfaction. He folded completely. His lawyer convinced him that 18 months was better than a decade. The money will be returned within 30 days. The house transfer paperwork is being filed today. The restraining order is active immediately. When does he go to prison? Sentencing hearing is scheduled for 90 days from now. He'll likely start serving within 2 weeks after that. The prosecutor is recommending the full 18 months with no early release given the premeditation and the vulnerability of the victim. Victim. I was a victim. The word sat strangely, uncomfortable but accurate. What about Brooke? She's been interviewed by police. Claimed she didn't know the money was stolen, that Ethan told her it was from his inheritance. We're not pursuing charges against her for receiving stolen property given her cooperation, but she's been named in the civil suit. She'll have to return the car and forfeit her interest in the Florida condo. She's also been fired from the insurance company for violating their ethics policy regarding employee relationships. Consequences. Real, tangible consequences for people who'd hurt me. "How are you doing?" Dr. Quinn asked, and her tone shifted slightly, less lawyer and more human. "Really? I don't know yet. Ask me in 6 months." "Fair enough. For what it's worth, you handled that mediation with remarkable composure. A lot of people would have fallen apart seeing evidence of their spouse's betrayal laid out like that." "I did my falling apart in private. The public version gets to be strong." She laughed. "Smart. That's a valuable skill, especially if you end up working with your father. The foundation world is full of people who'll look for weakness. Don't show it to them." After we hung up, I walked through my house slowly, room by room, reclaiming it. The living room where Ethan had told me he wanted a divorce just 3 months into dating, then taken it back and proposed instead. The kitchen where we'd cooked together on Sunday mornings, back when he still pretended to enjoy my company. The bedroom where I'd slept beside a man planning to abandon me. I ended up in the guest room, surrounded by unassembled baby furniture and paint samples for a nursery that would never exist. Simone found me there an hour later, sitting on the floor amid the boxes. "I'm turning it back into a studio," I announced. "All of this goes back to the store or gets donated. I'm reclaiming my space." "Hell yes, you are." She sat down beside me. "Want help?" "Always." We spent the evening dismantling someone else's dream and making room for mine. The crib went into one pile, the changing table into another. The paint samples came off the wall, the mobile. With the elephants and giraffes got packed away in a box marked "Donate." By midnight, the room was empty except for us, and years of accumulated dust. "Fresh start," Simone said, surveying our work. "Fresh start," I agreed. 3 months later, I stood in a courtroom and watched Ethan Latham get sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. He'd lost weight, aged visibly, wore a suit that looked borrowed. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, He turned to where I sat in the gallery and tried to apologize. Iris, I'm sorry. I was scared and stupid, and I made terrible choices. I never meant to hurt you. The judge cut him off. Mr. Latham, you stole over $500,000 from your wife while she was unconscious during cancer surgery. You moved your mistress into the marital home before the divorce was even filed. You structured financial transactions to avoid federal oversight. These aren't the actions of someone who was scared. These are the actions of someone who was calculating and cruel. I'm not interested in your apologies to the victim. I'm interested in ensuring you face consequences for your actions. 18 months. He'd be out in 15 with good behavior. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. Brooke wasn't in the courtroom. She'd moved back to her parents' house in another state, had the baby alone, posted photos on social media of her new life as a single mother. No mention of Ethan, no mention of me, like none of it had ever happened. After the sentencing, Tobias met me outside the courthouse. We'd been having weekly coffee meetings for 3 months, slowly building something that resembled a relationship. He didn't push, didn't demand more than I was ready to give, just showed up consistently, reliably, the way a father should. How are you feeling? He asked. Vindicated, exhausted, ready to be done with this chapter. Good news then. The Foundation Board approved the new curriculum expansion. If you're still interested in the position, it's yours. I'd been working as a consultant for the past 2 months, helping design art education programs while still teaching my regular classes. The work was challenging, meaningful, exactly the kind of thing I dreamed about doing when I first became a teacher. I'm interested, but I have conditions. Tobias smiled. I'd expect nothing less. What are they? I keep teaching 1 class a year, just 1 at my old school with my old students. I don't want to lose touch with the actual classroom. Done. What else? I want my mother's name on one of the programs. The Sarah Brennan Arts Initiative or something. She was an electrician, but she loved art. She used to take me to museums on weekends, free admission days. She'd want her name attached to something that helps kids. Tobias's eyes filled with tears. She'd love that. Anything else? Yeah, I want you to stop calling yourself my father. His face fell, hurt flashing across it before he could mask it. I want you to earn it, I continued. Be here. Show up. Prove that you're not going to disappear again the moment things get hard. Do that for a year, maybe 2, and then we'll talk about what to call you. He nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair. What should I call you in the meantime? Iris works. Or if you want to be formal, Ms. Latham, though I'm changing that back to Brennan as soon as the divorce is finalized. Iris it is. He extended his hand, formal, professional. I shook it, and we had a deal. 6 months after Ethan went to prison, I stood in my reclaimed studio painting on a Sunday afternoon. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows now, installed during renovations I'd paid for with the returned money from the settlement. Natural light flooded the space, bouncing off white walls and illuminating the canvas in front of me. I was working on a series called Reconstruction, pieces about breaking and rebuilding, about finding strength in broken places. The first painting showed surgical scars transformed into gold, the Japanese art of kintsugi applied to human flesh. The second was a house with walls made of legal documents, foundation built from court transcripts. This one, the third in the series, was a portrait. A woman standing in an empty room, surrounded by ghosts of who she used to be. Behind her, a door opening onto light. My phone buzzed. A text from Simone. Coffee tomorrow? Want to hear about your dad's latest attempt to spoil you? I smiled. Tobias had been showing up relentlessly for 6 months. Weekly coffee dates, foundation board meetings where he actually listened to my input, and a birthday gift that made me cry. A donation to my old elementary school's art program in my mother's name. Funding supplies for the next 5 years. He was earning it. Slowly, imperfectly, but consistently. Another text, this one from Dr. Quinn. Clean scan results came in, still. Cancer-free. See you at the Foundation Gala next month. The Gala, a fundraiser for the expanded arts programs, where I'd be giving a speech about the importance of creative education. A year ago, I'd been teaching 3rd graders and married to a man who was planning to rob me. Now I was directing a multi-million-dollar initiative and slowly learning what it meant to have a father. Life was strange, painful and strange and unexpectedly beautiful. I picked up my brush and added another layer to the painting, building depth and light into the empty room, showing the way forward even when you can't quite see where you're going. Thank you so much for staying with me through this entire journey. If you made it to the end, you're incredible. More powerful stories are already on your screen. Click one now and see what happens next. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you do if you discovered a long-lost parent had been watching your life from the shadows? Would you give them a second chance? I read every comment, and your thoughts mean everything. See you in the next story.